Welcome to Voice of Sankofa, where I investigate history to get to the truth on what is real. Today, we live in an age where we are fed so much information through our television and social media, much of which isn't true, intentionally done by those in political positions. They control the information that is fed through our medium platforms as well as the education system. Those in power maintain the ability to control the narrative and dictate whether truth or lies are spread to the public. Truthful knowledge is power, and those in control of that knowledge, who are the government and elites, have abused this power every day with their manipulative tactics, all to control mass populations of people. People are suffering at an all-time high because they are not given the appropriate tools to thrive, only to survive. And this survival mode is what the powers seek to control the masses. I am here to share the secrets of the elites on how they maintain their power and control over people and the means in which they do so. It goes a lot deeper than just limited opportunities, especially to those in melanated communities. It's a highly orchestrated network that works together at all levels that operates from mind control techniques. Listen in if you want to know the ways to break out of this mental matrix, which is spiritual warfare, a clear attack on our mind, body, and spirit. The manipulation of our minds and destruction of nature, or the self, encompasses the entire framework of spiritual warfare. Religion gives spiritual warfare in the context of good versus evil. God outside of the person controls the fate of humanity, and the idea that the devil and angels are battling for the soul. However, the spiritual context of spiritual warfare is vastly different, where it refers to the disharmony within the person and focuses on bringing that into balance. Two entirely different concepts. Before the mass worldwide spread of Abrahamic religions, the indigenous practices of those seeking a higher purpose and meaning on earth were aligned with spirituality. In spirituality, it's enlightenment versus ignorance. In religion, enlightenment is the equivalent of good, and ignorance is the equivalent of evil. Someone who has an ongoing internal conflict within their mind and heart, or a battle against negative external influences, are examples of spiritual warfare within an individual. The higher, broader definition of spiritual warfare are circumstances which hinder the soul from its spiritual awakening, the keys to higher consciousness and universal mind, and the evolution of the mind, body, and spirit to experience heaven on earth. Individually and collectively, many people are living in a mental matrix because our environment has been intentionally manipulated for people to perceive negativity or to have certain experiences, all in effort to alter consciousness into a negative reality. Most negative things in our environment, locally or globally, isn't really happening or is artificially organized. False narratives spread by media outlets ordered by government, and all to keep people in a mental matrix. A negative perception of reality equals the negativity we see on earth, because all is mental. The overall objective of spiritual warfare is for people to be and live in negativity. So, question is, why would someone or something like government intentionally inflict spiritual warfare onto others? Well, the answer is power and control for the elites. For generations, our world has been filled with so much suffering and chaos because those in high power intentionally disrupts the evolution of humanity. This speaks to the Gnostic religious beliefs whereby the physical world was created and ruled by archons, also known as demons, who keep the world in chaos and prevent souls from ascending. I mentioned this in more detail in a previous video. The elites are infamous for creating disharmony within societies, where love is replaced with fear and truths are replaced with lies. The main objective of Satan and his demons, the archons responsible for the ongoing spiritual war we witness today. Most people around the world have been misinformed about spirituality and spiritual enlightenment, done intentionally by those seeking to gain control of us. Dark negative forces on earth siphon the energy of people by keeping people in low vibration. People in lower consciousness are more susceptible to spiritual attacks and therefore more easily to manipulate and control. However, the person possesses the power to ward off these dark negative forces by raising in their consciousness and increasing their spiritual protection. Negative entities are drawn to negative thoughts or actions. This is how the person engages with this energy. What people perceive as a negative voice or idea that their mind is telling them to do something bad. Now, a higher perspective of looking at negativity or negative forces is that it's here to challenge the person to become better by making us take a look at unhealed trauma and do the shadow work to heal. Those in power have withheld many truths from us about our human existence, leading many people into darkness. Without knowledge of self, Satan and his demonic forces have been able to reign on earth. Demonic entities exist in the spiritual unseen realm as well as materialize in the physical realm. Now, before you is a list of why elites and world powers intentionally inflict spiritual warfare onto people. The Bible depicts a cosmic conflict between God and Satan, with Satan portrayed as a fallen angel who rebelled against God and now seeks to oppose God's will and lead humanity astray. This conflict is evident in various religious narratives. Satan's ongoing battle against the Most High God's chosen people, those with a soul. His objective is to kill, steal, and destroy. Soul beings, because of trauma and indoctrination, have lost their memory of this battle, and as long as Satan is on earth, we have always been under attack. So because our memory was erased of who we are and what we are here to do, the Illuminati and Freemasons have run of this country and world governments across continents. Witchcraft is warfare. Everything we experience in our reality is energy, visible and invisible. People have the power to alchemize energy to be beneficial or harmful. From eating salads that fuels the body to praying to God for protection, it all has an impact on the energy within us and around us. The invisible energy is the supernatural unseen world that can be manipulated to produce an outcome of benefit or harm. The wind that blows, we know it's there because we can feel it. However, we do not see it. We're spirits having a physical experience on earth, and we have lost sight of this. Things in this universe can't be explained, and that is the mystical aspect of this world. And I find it interesting how people believe in God, a mystical force they have never seen, yet deny the supernatural, will pray to angels and fear demons, yet still deny that a mystical world exists. People who possess an awareness of mysticism know that the spiritual unseen realm affects physical outcomes. And if this energy is manipulated to inflict harm onto others, this is witchcraft, which is also called sorcery. Mysticism/spirituality is dualistic, positive or negative, and is not evil. What's evil is the person who uses it to harm others. Mysticism or spirituality used with good intentions is a healing positive practice. Witchcraft is spiritual and physical warfare. People working with supernatural unseen forces to do harm to others is very real and deadly. Sorcery is black magic done to manipulate energy for a multitude of reasons. A method of sorcery called spell work or casting spells is meant to negatively alter thoughts and perceptions of people to create illusions, as well as speak misfortune into others' lives. Spreading rumors or gossip is spell work because a person is attempting to negatively alter someone's thoughts or perception of another person. Words are energy and carry supernatural power, and when we use them negatively, it can cause harm. There is power in the tongue. It speaks to life or death. If you think about propaganda exaggerates truth and spreads lies. And the negative propaganda that is spread about Black people or Black communities have caused many deaths. Propaganda is sorcery. When people engage in casting spells or any type of sorcery, they are engaging with a dark entity or energy, working through that person to tear others down. Many call this a demon or negative entity that's attached to a person. These are concepts intentionally left out of the Christian Bible. Things don't happen out of thin air in our universe. Everything happens as a result of something else, a cause and effect relationship. People from all walks of life practice witchcraft. Witchcraft doesn't have to be an exaggerated act like we see on the movie screen. Women or men around a cauldron hollering at a moon. Someone who is perceived to have bad luck, have a lot of negative things occurring in their life, or even view their life negatively, they are under spiritual attack by dark forces. Negative entities feed off negative thoughts, especially thoughts about them. So take care of your mental state and at your very best try to heal unhealed wounds. In spiritual warfare, by not choosing a side and having an ambivalence towards living in practices of higher intentions, a person invites all spirits and energies to enter their life. People committed to sorcery are called witches and warlocks. All works done against the Most High God because its practice is rooted in wickedness. There are some who practice witchcraft their entire adult life, as well as families who introduce their children to this practice at a young age. The United States of Babylon operates by way of witchcraft onto the unsuspecting population. From the Bible, the patriarch Abraham and his family were Babylonians. And if a person was to investigate the history of Babylon, they would find out the Babylonians were Satanists practicing sorcery. However, because many followers have been influenced since childhood that Christianity is the real story of the Most High God, it's been spell work done for people to participate in the satanic religion. The sole purpose of the Bible was used to cast spells on mass populations of people, a method of mind control to have people listen, obey, and serve an abusive authority without resistance. Well-known secret societies are organizations of sorcery occupied by warlocks and fraternal orders. Here are examples of spiritual warfare on a global scale by the powers that be. Anything that keeps us from attaining the truth or intentionally tries to harm nature or people are all factors that disrupt the mind, body, and spirit and is warfare. Here are more measures worldwide governments and elites have taken to disrupt the balance of the mind, body, and spirit. Here are factors of spiritual warfare on the micro level against the individual and community. Trauma is the major source of spiritual warfare against a person. Trauma being normalized in our society is an assault on the Most High God's intention for us on earth. It disrupts the mind, body, and spirit, affecting a person's physical and mental health. Ultimately leads a person to living in survival mode if they don't have the proper interventions. This is something that has been primarily targeted towards Black people and communities, which I'll explain the why in later slides. This statement is from Google AI. Individuals with PTSD or a history of trauma may have smaller brain volumes in certain regions compared to those without trauma exposure. Specifically, studies have shown reductions in the cerebellum, amygdala, and hippocampus. These brain regions play crucial roles in emotional regulation, memory, and fear processing, which are all areas impacted by trauma. There are many therapeutic interventions available to heal the person's psyche, and I'll provide a couple of tips in a couple of slides. Trauma has been the biggest threat against the mental, physical, and spiritual health of the Black community and has hindered many communities from experiencing health and harmony. Changes to brain structure and development not only impacts the health of the individual, but it also impacts the health of the community. Higher levels of trauma within a community, we see higher poverty, more school dropouts, more mental health issues, and more crime. And this is not by chance. We live in a society that promotes treatment rather than real healing, purposely targeting certain communities to endure relentless amounts of trauma. Again, this is spiritual warfare. This slide explains what happens to the brain of a child when living in survival mode. It states, a young person's brain will not learn, absorb, or retain information when they are in survival mode. You can also be born in survival mode, which is an adaptation to abnormal, harsh psychological environment. This may look like bad behavior, but the brain is responding to survival. On this diagram, the areas in green and orange are the areas of the brain that are impacted by trauma. The prefrontal cortex, which is the learning and thinking brain, is the logical, smart part of the brain that goes offline. And the limbic system, which is the emotional center, is the lower brain function that takes over. This changes the person to be controlled by their emotions rather than using processed logical thinking. A brain that functions at a lower capacity keeps a person in lower consciousness. Since childhood trauma impacts brain development, we can understand why some children are poor performers or misbehave in school. This is the cause and effect between trauma and intelligence, both emotional and mental, and between trauma and behavior, because it impedes healthy brain functioning. Without positive early intervention, these children tend to also become poor performers in their adult life. Since science has shown the brain changes that develops with trauma, why has our medical care system neglected the connection of poor school performance or misbehaving children to trauma and not provided necessary interventions, especially in high-risk communities? It's all because having low-income Black communities living in survival mode generation after generation is a governmental agenda for Black people to be in lower consciousness and not be high-functioning adults. So this is why our children's poor performance is often ignored or misbehavior either harshly disciplined or quick to be placed on medication. Children who endure high levels of trauma are at higher risk of dropping out of school, committing crimes, in prison, living in poverty, or even killed. This generational cycle is rarely broken in families or communities impacted by ongoing trauma because the government intentionally sets up strategies to keep this cycle of trauma maintained. A population of people struggling to survive will never thrive. Their tactics have created a dependency on government assistance, which allows them to manipulate and control certain populations more easily. People in lower consciousness are easy to control and are less threat to the government. Did you know that the government housing or low-income communities in slavery have a similar setup with similar outcomes, but just structured differently? The main difference between slavery and low-income communities, it is made to look like the person or community is at fault for their own conditions instead of a slave master. However, the government is the slave master and the police are the slave catchers. It's our responsibility to heal ourselves and our families so this vicious cycle can stop once and for all. Here are the overall negative effects of spiritual warfare on the spiritual, mental, and physical level. Negative subconscious programming, controlled by one's emotions, therefore more easily manipulated and controlled. Intellectual challenges, destructive behaviors to self, family, and community. Lowers likelihood of attaining higher consciousness in adulthood. Ongoing internal conflicts lead to mental health challenges. More vulnerable to spiritual attacks against negative entities or negative energetic attachments, what some may say possessed. Can shut down a person's direct connection to the Most High God because they fail to listen to their higher self, and physical health challenges. The battle of good versus evil is the battle of consciousness, keeping people in lower conscious state to never ascend to their higher conscious self. Our soul connects us to the Most High God. Therefore, people who have a soul possess great possibilities and powers granted by the Most High God if fully functioning at a high capacity within their innate spiritual self. However, if not given the tools to attain higher consciousness or lack the awareness of who they are, then spiritual gifts are often neglected, and the person becomes a target for spiritual attacks, is more vulnerable to witchcraft, and this is the objective of this Babylonian satanic system: to siphon people's gift to benefit itself. This world has been living by the religions of Abraham for a long time. Abraham was a Babylonian who, unbeknownst to many religious followers, would have been a Satanist practicing Chaldean witchcraft, worshiping serpents. The people in power should not hold power because they operate in lowered consciousness, creating wars, political corruption, and doing witchcraft to control others. So they have to discourage or stop citizens away from attaining a higher consciousness. Otherwise, their power would be no more. The expectations of the soul is for a higher transcendence on earth. People who possess a soul have this calling that's unique to their own soul's blueprint. And when unable to rise into this higher calling, the person can feel restless, bored, and even angry. In our society, ignorance and conflict is encouraged, even rewarded, and higher intelligence or consciousness is shunned. And this is intentionally done by the powers who seek to oppress people's gifts for them to stay in control and wealth. We, as soul beings, are supposed to live sovereign, under no one's control, because in higher consciousness you have the ability to self-govern and live life by your own rules. So now do you understand why we are constantly under spiritual attack by melanated non-ether beings? The Illuminati and Masonic fraternity are the world's central network of witchcraft today. It's their soulless satanic system who works up against the Most High God's chosen people. Remember, Satan has an ongoing battle with God's people. Many of us have forgotten by way of social conditioning and brainwashing. We are Satan's biggest threat to his reign on earth, so we are treated the worst of the worst to suppress our God-given gifts. Here are some simple steps to start self-healing: movement, exercise, and healthy eating, meditation, setting boundaries, showing kindness to yourself, forgiveness, limiting negativity, connecting with nature daily, detach from materialism, and healing modalities such as mindfulness, journaling, gratitude, shadow work, yoga, and so on. The goal is to regulate the nervous system and get out of being in survival mode, which is the flight, fight, and freeze response. Healing can reverse brain changes made by trauma, create epigenetic shifts in the DNA, as well as clear out bloodline traumas or curses. There are even more tips if you want to do your own online search. There are people who are born narcissistic, psychopathic, or sociopathic, and then there are those who have been groomed or programmed to be narcissistic, psychopathic, or sociopathic. These are low-functioning individuals who base their decisions on superficial, self-serving gains, such as striving to be the richest, the most attractive, the most desired, the most knowledgeable, even to possess power and influence over others. A very insecure and very highly competitive energy. These qualities, no doubt, probably sound very familiar in some of the people you know. If you are a person dealing with a narcissist, you are engaging in spiritual warfare. Narcissism is classified as a personality disorder, and narcissistic people without a doubt are mentally unstable, however functional in most cases. And I've had many personal experiences with this type of energy. They may or may not see themselves in the way we see them, or at least admit to it because they need to be superior and perfect. It is an epidemic in this country that has been neglected to be addressed until now. We have a society which normalizes narcissistic behavior and a government ran by narcissists and psychopaths. The United States of Babylon intentionality is to create the person who is competitive, self-absorbed, superficial, with the need to be right, who has unhealed traumas, living in a valueless society where anything goes. a grooming that has occurred for many of us since childhood. In investigating world history, the competitive energy that exists in the United States mimics the same energy described in ancient Babylon. Dealing intimately with narcissists is dealing with someone who has a negative entity or demonic energy inhabiting within the essence of that person. If they possess a soul, the soul is truly at war with itself. Spiritually speaking, this is why a narcissist can hurt someone and feel no remorse, and in many cases blame their victim for their harmful actions. Again, this is spiritual warfare against the person who actively engages in a relationship with them, whether familial, platonic, or romantic. As discussed previously, for the narcissistic personality disorder to develop within a soul being, the soul must become broken, often by severe trauma, which disrupts the central nervous system, and at this point, a negative entity or demon can hijack the person's system per se, and they are no longer themselves, and the dark force takes over the person. For the energy or entity to disguise itself within a person, it conceals itself by pretending to be a high-functioning person in public spaces. The spiritual component of narcissism is the only way to view it to understand how to deal with these people. It's a very manipulative energy. However, people in their personal relationship gets to see the person act in their true self, which is highly toxic. Not everyone with narcissistic traits have a narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissism does exist on the spectrum. Narcissism in its severe form is psychopath and sociopath. They are very psychologically damaging to those they victimize because they are highly manipulative. They rarely show their true selves when they first meet people, which is why many get duped by their nice guy or nice girl demeanor. But they are vipers finding someone to attach themselves to. And this is usually the empathic person who is genuinely kind with a loving demeanor. They will become the narcissist's energetic supplier, where they benefit from the kindness of the person and attempt to create a codependent relationship to siphon the person's energy for their benefit. This can look like the mother who manipulates her son's relationship so he won't leave her because she wants his love for herself. The Abrahamic religions is a tool used to groom narcissism into society, with the narcissistic God Yahweh. If you know the traits of narcissism, then you will know that the God of the Christian Bible has similar traits. So if people really believe that Yahweh is the Most High God, then they are more prone to accept narcissistic behavior or act in a similar manner as Yahweh. These are traits of a narcissist: apathetic, highly manipulative, controlling, chronically envious, lacks accountability, self-absorbed, and vengeful. Their vengeance is why they're dangerous. The core of the narcissistic personality is an immature, manipulative, often sneaky behavior. And in most cases, they refuse to mature mentally or emotionally because they lack accountability for their destructive behavior. Most are not willing to heal. They just seek people they can control and manipulate. The narcissistic abuser will not change, nor will a person change them. So it's wise to just leave this type of person alone. They may love others, but their love is often conditional, only when it benefits their needs. Exploiting people doesn't always mean the narcissist is seeking material gains. Often it's the energetic gains they seek, and this makes the empathic person a very viable source of energy. Narcissists are attracted to empathic people, and unhealed empaths are attracted to narcissists. The wounded warrior syndrome, who wants to save everybody, however, gives very little to themselves. Kind gestures from the narcissist aren't sincere most times. Relationships are transactional and a means of getting what they want. They are a cancer to families and communities because of their toxic behavior, because of their jealousy and often hatefulness, which causes them to want to destroy others, even as severe as to exterminate or kill someone. Family dynamics suffer because of the narcissist. Their jealousy, their competitive nature, their need to be admired and center of attention. Going as far as turning family members against another they deem their competition so they can maintain their perceived superior status within a family. Many sibling rivalries result from having a narcissistic parent, so highly insecure that they create conditions to have their children fight for their attention. They will intentionally play mind games or start arguments just to see if a person cares. Because of these behaviors, one single narcissist can bring down an entire family or community. They're very psychologically damaging. Again, narcissists are people who have a mental dis-ease. And I also want to reiterate that narcissism does exist on a spectrum. The extreme forms are that of psychopathy and sociopathy. They do not express remorse and their world is centered on them, no one else, including their own children. Now, what I found interesting in my research is that a narcissist tend to be more attracted to doing witchcraft on others. And I suppose it's because of their desire to dominate and control others, very superficial as well as vengeful. Our society are full of narcissists at the top and lower levels. They exist in all professions, from the school teacher to the preacher, the social worker, doctor, politician, and so on. Every socioeconomic status, every ethnicity is infected with narcissists. In my opinion, it's one of the most dangerous personality disorders there is, and rarely discussed in mainstream media because most of the 1% wealth holders and politicians are narcissistic. So acknowledgement of this disorder would bring too much attention to their destructive behaviors towards public citizens, in which they don't want to be held accountable. This is the primary reason why people can suffer tremendously in this world, and the powers won't help unless they get something on the back end. They are fully responsible for the suffering and will never let up. The narcissist is a nuisance to everybody that has an intimate relationship with them, especially the empathic person. They tend to inflict pain onto them the worst because it's allowed. This is spiritual warfare of good versus evil. Babylon's social subconscious programming of Western society values selfishness over community. It values greed over sharing, values superficiality over deep emotional bonding, all which trains individuals to become the ultimate narcissists. Next, I'll talk about colonization, more information regarding witchcraft, and cults. Here's a concept that needs more attention, so here I am to present it to you. A term most Americans aren't aware of: cultural hegemony. It's a concept that describes how a dominant group maintains its power not just through force, but by shaping the cultural norms, values, and beliefs of a society. The ability to shape people's understanding of the world. This creates a situation where the dominant group's worldview is seen as the common sense and is accepted by everyone, including those who are disadvantaged by it, making it appear natural and unchangeable. The key aspects is to gain dominance through consent, by shaping perceptions, making the dominant view seem more natural than just social constructs subject to change. The dominant group uses institutions like education, media, and religion to disseminate its values and beliefs, which then become the accepted norms and are internalized by the wider population. A variety of examples can illustrate cultural hegemony, such as the acceptance of a healthcare system that favors the wealthy, or the portrayal of certain groups as inherently inferior, says an article from EBSCO. Understanding cultural hegemony is the first step towards challenging it. By recognizing how dominant narratives are constructed and disseminated, individuals and groups can begin to question and resist the status quo. And this information is from Google AI. Now take a look at this. Here are illustrations found on the net about the concept of cultural hegemony. Here are more illustrations found on the net. Now I'll talk about the concept of cultural imperialism, and I'll read the underlying sentence as well. Cultural imperialism comprises the cultural dimensions of imperialism. The word imperialism describes practices in which a country engages culture, language, tradition, ritual, politics, and economics to create and maintain unequal social and economic relationships among social groups. Cultural imperialism often uses wealth, media power, and violence to implement the system of cultural hegemony that legitimizes imperialism. Cultural imperialism may take various forms, such as attitude, a formal policy, or military action. The spread of culture around the world is referred to as cultural globalization. Here is more about cultural imperialism. Quote, "The term cultural imperialism refers largely to the exercise of power in a cultural relationship in which the principles, ideas, practices, and values of a powerful invading society are imposed upon indigenous cultures in the occupied areas. The process is also present when powerful nations are able to flood the information and media space with their ideas, limiting countries' and communities' ability to compete and expose people to locally created content." End quote. Now here's more. Quote, "In order to achieve that end, cultural engineering projects strive to isolate residents within constructed spheres of symbols, such that they eventually, in some cases after several generations, abandon other cultures and identify with the new symbols. The broader intended outcome of these interventions might be described as a common recognition of possession of the land itself on behalf of the organizations publishing and financing the images. Cultural imperialism refers to American empire's coercive and persuasive agencies in their capacity to promote and universalize an American way of life in other countries without the reciprocation of influence. Cultural imperialism pressured, forced, and bribed societies to integrate with the U.S. expansive capitalist model, but also incorporated them with attraction and persuasion by winning the mutual consent, even solicitation of the indigenous rulers. For penetration on a significant scale, the medium themselves must be captured by the dominating penetrating power. This occurs largely through the commercialization of broadcasting." End quote. So do you see the strategies and spell work the conquerors do to achieve dominance over the indigenous populations, whose lands they stole and people they exterminated? Here is my last slide speaking about cultural imperialism. Quote, "Keeping in line with the trends of international imperialistic endeavors, the expansion of Canadian and American territory in the 19th century saw cultural imperialism employed as a means of control over indigenous populations. This, when used in conjunction of more traditional forms of ethnic cleansing and genocide in the United States, saw devastating, lasting effects on indigenous communities. Schools across Canada, as a means to remove indigenous persons from their culture and instill in them the beliefs and values of the majorized colonial hegemony. The policies of these schools, as described by Ward Churchill in his book Kill the Indian, Save the Man, were to forcefully assimilate students who were often removed with force from their families. These schools forbid students from using their native languages and participating in their own cultural practices. Now, listen to this. Residential schools were largely ran by Christian churches, operating in conjunction with Christian missions with minimal government oversight. The government provided little leadership, and the clergy in charge were left to decide what to teach and how to teach. Their priority was to impart the teachings of their church or order, not to provide a good education that could help students in their post-graduation lives. End quote. So this is an admittance that the American education system was to impart obedience to the colonistic system, but not to create a smart child. And Christian missionary work was used as a means of indoctrination to the colonial powers. These are the red flags of cult leaders. The red flag of the religious cult of Jim Jones was the mandatory participation of his members in suicide drills. Religious cults prey on the gullible, spiritually ignorant, and vulnerable populations, such as those who live in poverty, have a low educational level, and those who are mentally and emotionally imbalanced. About 15 years ago, I visited a church with a friend in a very poor community, and the pastor was driving a bright green Lamborghini, which I found appalling and insensitive to its members. False prophets are leaders of some churches, leaders of social movements, and are often charismatic and have all the right things to say. But a loving heart is not what drives them to leadership. There is always a selfish, self-indulgent reason or wicked agenda behind their motives. In my opinion, the number one red flag that I've read as a trend amongst cults is the recruitment of members. There are many elements of a cult that community just doesn't align with. A lot of people are seeking community, but in their ignorance, they are getting into cults because in America, people are accustomed to them through social conditioning. And I want to be clear, not every large gathering of people involves a cult. Some groups are that of community. Listed are the characteristics of both. Some friend groups, social groups are examples of community where individuality is honored, transparency always occurs, and respect is given. Cults can look benign, and those are the ones that really deceive people. Some people actually knowingly choose to be in an evil cult. However, others really do believe that they are joining a positive group, but unfortunately lack the awareness of groups' intentions. A lot of spiritual groups today are being headed by male and female sorcerers, dark high priestesses, and dark high priests who hide their true intentions. Indoctrinations of following cults and cultic behavior came with the following of Abrahamic religions, also with the popularity of college fraternities and sororities, which have normalized this kind of setup. If you are seeking community, pay attention to the quality of the people in the group and not the quantity of how many people are in the group. Today's trendy spirituality followings are misleading many seeking knowledge and filled with people who consider spirituality as a trend and not a lifestyle. Trendy spirituality groups give the vibe of a meetup group. But for the people who are in the walk of self-discovery and healing, please stay away from these groups. They will mislead you as the false light. Learn the nature of these spiritual cults and how they are ran, so you will not get duped to join into their dark web. A lot are being headed by witches and warlocks, masking as love and light. Again, number one flag of any cult is the recruitment of people, as well as cult-like initiations, such as baptisms. Know what you are practicing and do your own research. Better yet, ask for divine guidance to lead you in making decisions. Real healers and teachers don't seek to recruit, but offer wisdom and guidance and believes in individuality and free will without soul-binding contracts, such as initiations. Real light workers are aware that the Most High God provides opportunities of abundance, not by the recruitment of people into a clique. We were conditioned from childhood to conform and follow the crowd, which has been the detriment to individuality as well as personal safety. Here are the disturbing hidden cult practices of the Black Hebrews in the ancient Near East and India, the biblical times of Abraham in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan. The ancient Black Hebrews are many groups known today who have separated but are from the same stock, and here are their many names. The Cushites, Ethiopians, Indians, and this is the America Washita Indians and their affiliated tribes. Moors, Nubians, including many West African tribes such as the Akan, Yoruba, Igbo, Mande, Fulani, Congo, Edo, Masi, and Ga, plus many more. For many of us, Black Americans, these are not our long distance kin, nor did we come from Africa. We originated here in the Americas. They lied. How else could they cover up why so much African DNA is in the United States? Same people group / bloodline with the same culture and cult practices passed down the generations. Their sexually depraved practices. Our ancestors were spiritually attacked through the sexual deviance of these groups. Trauma that causes disharmony within self, families, and communities, which shifted the dynamic of our communities today. Cliques, cults, secret societies, fraternities, and sororities, we have been born into a society that values cults over community. There are hidden stories buried in the walls of these churches and secret societies that have committed multiple atrocities against humanity. Do you think they would really tell people what they're really doing? They siphon the collective energy of followers to feed their demons to stay in power, influence, and wealth. Our energy is the most powerful thing we own, and where we spend that energy matters. Do we give it to ourselves and keep our power, or give it to others and lose that power? That's why they try to keep people in the churches utilizing fear tactics. The Christian Holy Bible is based on the Key of Solomon. The Key of Solomon is a book of magic spells and demonic rituals. Now, based on biblical literature, King Solomon was the fourth monarch of the kingdom of Israel and Judah, according to the Hebrew Bible. The successor of his father David, he is described as having been the penultimate ruler of all 12 tribes of Israel under an amalgamated Israel and Judah. The hypothesized dates of Solomon's reign are from 970 to 931 BCE. A Jewish prophet, Solomon is portrayed as wealthy, wise, powerful, and dedicated follower of Yahweh, as attested by the eponymous Solomon's Temple, which was the first temple in Jerusalem. He is also the subject of many later references in legends, most notably in the Testament of Solomon, part of the biblical Apocrypha from the 1st century CE. Now, this small background about Solomon came from Wikipedia. Now, I'll refer to the pages before you, and this comes from a book entitled The Key of Solomon, the King, an 1889 edition based on the book from an older text from Solomon, King of Israel, discussing Jewish magic. I'll read the underlined sentences as well as the area within the red brackets and make your own judgments. Quote, O Lord God, Holy Father, Almighty and Merciful One, who has created all things, who knoweth all things, and can do all things, from whom nothing is hidden, to whom nothing is impossible. Let the exorcist lay his hand upon the pinnacles, the prayers and the conjurations proper for conquering, subduing, and reproving the spirits. O ye spirits, ye are conjured by the power, wisdom, and virtue of the Spirit of God, by the uncreate divine knowledge, which Adam having invoked, he acquired the knowledge of all created things, that Noah having pronounced it, saved himself and protected himself with his whole household from the waters of the deluge. Fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation, which Isaac having invoked, he was found worthy to escape from the sword of his father Abraham. Now I'll stop here and you may continue to read on. On page 28 of this book, it states that Joshua invoked a demon to fight against the Moabites. And in some of my previous YouTube videos, I discussed that the Moors attest to being the Moabites. Continued on. I conjure ye anew, and I powerfully urge ye, O Emons, in whatever so part of the world ye may be, that ye come promptly to accomplish our desire, and all things we demand from your obedience. I conjure ye anew by the 2 tablets of the law, by the 5 books of Moses, by the 7 burning lamps on the candlestick of gold. Heavenly Jerusalem, and by the most holy name of God, in 4 letters, and by him who enlightened all things. Holy names, Adonai, Yah, Eloha, Elohim, and so on, shall command ye in the great name of God. So, what do you think? My intentions are to reveal the hidden truth about the Bible. That's why I read this text, not to conjure anything. But I do offer you to say a prayer of cleansing and protection. Here is the untold version about the King of Solomon to Christian followers. King Solomon was a warlock who summoned demons to visibly appear, who worked on his behalf to attain power and wealth. He is famously known for his writings. He wrote demonology books, textbooks of black magic, cataloging and describing demons and their hierarchies. Solomon had the ability to control demons through a magical ring. These demons are sometimes depicted as forced laborers assisting in the construction of the temple in Jerusalem. Now here's a passage from Wikipedia. Quote, in the Testament of Solomon, Beelzebub appears as a prince of the demons and says that he was formerly a leading heavenly angel who was associated with the star Hesperus, the normal Greek name for the planet Venus, as an evening star. Seemingly, Beelzebub here is synonymous with Lucifer. Beelzebub claims to cause destruction through tyrants, to cause demons to be worshipped among men, to excite priests to lust, to cause jealousies in cities and murders, and to bring about war. The Testament of Solomon is an Old Testament pseudeographical work purportedly written by King Solomon, in which the author mostly describes particular demons whom he enslaved to help build Solomon's temple, with substantial Christian interpolations. End quote. Acts 7 verse 43 states, Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the start of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. The star of Remphan is also the seal of Solomon, as in King Solomon, and the Babylonian Jews have renamed this shape the Star of David today, the symbol of their god Moloch. The star of Remphan is the Greek god Saturn. Now there's a satanic cult that exists called the cult of Saturn, or Satan, who worships Moloch. The caption underneath the seal of Solomon says, this is a talisman in medieval Jewish, Christian, and Islamic legends. This seal has a magical signet ring said to have been possessed by King Solomon, which gave him the power to command demons, genies, or jinn, which are demonic entities able to appear in human and animal forms and to possess humans. He was also able to speak with animals. All the biblical stories of the patriarchs are satanic, as well as the figure Jesus. Most, if not all, the stories in the Bible are made up or taken from other sources, which the satanic Babylonians twisted words to alter perception. Jews sacrificed children to their demonic god Moloch. Now, if you recall the story of Abraham, where God told him to sacrifice his firstborn son Isaac as a burnt offering, this was a play on the child sacrifices to Moloch. Yahweh is Moloch, a trick to have followers believe that Yahweh somehow redeemed the evil Jews, which is all lies. These Abrahamic cults are still offering children as sacrifices to Moloch today. The Bible talks in third person, accusing others for what they are doing, manipulating unsuspecting Christian followers. A description from a source says, quote, "To summarize, the six-pointed star is the supreme symbol of satanic tyranny, which has been used by people throughout history to directly or indirectly worship Satan. The idolatrous Babylonians, Egyptians, and Assyrians used it. The Israelites worshiped star gods such as Remphan and Chiun. Solomon used it in the worship of false gods and to invoke the powers of Satan. The Antichrist, beast of Revelation, the Roman Catholic Church uses it." End quote. Satan and demonic forces have been reigning on earth because we don't fully operate in our spiritual nature, because we intentionally were disconnected from our spiritual selves. Religion was spread to stagnate and silence us through their spell work as a way to strip us from our power. In speaking about the supernatural defies logical left brain thinking, where science must have an explanation for everything that exists, and if it's not proven, it's not real, which is further from the truth. The creators of Abrahamic religions and our governments use supernatural means to manipulate, bully, and control people all the time. The Bible is full of supernatural events, yet Christian followers are told not to believe in it. This denying or countering are forms of gaslighting, seeding doubt into the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of followers to not trust their own judgment. These processes have occurred subtly and gradually over time to Christian followers, most often since childhood. And most are unaware that they are being gaslit, and for many of its effects, it can have dire consequences, resulting in mental health issues. Now, it's interesting how I've spoken to multiple people who lived their early lives outside of the U.S., and they grew up knowing that the supernatural realm exists, as well as admitting to have experienced supernatural events, things that are vehemently denied in the West. I read a document admitting that the U.S. government hides supernatural events and refuses to publicly admit to supernatural occurrences. Now, most don't mentally process the fact that the Jews, Christians, and Muslims are the colonizers of the Abrahamic bloodline that stole our indigenous land and resources, enslaved and killed our people. So sit with what I just said and process it as I repeat it again. The warlocks and witches, Jews, Christians, and Muslims are the colonizers of the Abrahamic bloodline that stole our land and resources, enslaved and killed our ancestors, and they still are doing evil to this day. The denial of the supernatural in Gentile Christianity is so we who have souls won't access the higher angelic realms. However, they are accessing the lower satanic realms every day to keep their power. Satan and his league of demons can't defeat the higher angelic realms, therefore they had to put us to sleep with religion. Drinking the blood of Christ and eating of his flesh. Now ask yourself, would that be something you would want to do if given the opportunity to do that today? This is cannibalism. The Christian Bible was used as a tool of indoctrination for the people labeled Gentiles. The Bible is interpreted in a way that specifically tailors to different audiences. For the Jew, the Bible is tailored to them as special, God's chosen to inherit the earth. So this conveys a message to them that they are more important than everyone else, leading them to possess a sense of superiority, entitlement, and arrogance. Bible teachings tailored to the Gentile audience have them believing they're not God's people, that they were wicked, unclean, out of favor with God, and under punishment, conveying the message of inferiority, naturally evil, a nuisance, and impure, which has produced an outcome of blind obedience to biblical teachings for God's love, favor, and deliverance from sin. This is subconscious programming for both populations, started in childhood when we are the most impressionable, placing spells over our mind. However, this spell is the detriment of the Gentiles, and more specifically, Black Gentiles, reinforced by a society that treats Black people less than. This negative treatment can reinforce the belief for Black people to believe they are in some way inferior and are always being punished for their wicked ways in antiquity, none of which is true. Black Christians and Black people in general have been placed under a spell to subdue them to the resistance of an abusive system, the same abusive system that has stolen our land rights and resources and killed our people. Now, Gentile Christians are not taught biblical teachings in the same manner as the Jews are taught. Gentile Christians are not taught biblical teachings in the same manner as the Muslims are being taught. Yet and still, all groups share the same patriarchs and have similar stories in a holy book. Simply put, that there are three different interpretations of religious texts about Abraham. But think about this. If there is only one Abraham, then there can only be one truth. So why are there so many ways of interpreting the same stories and producing different beliefs? How can a follower be sure they know what's true? Now, did you know that there was a such thing as a slave Bible using the same Abrahamic text meant to make the slave obedient? So what version do you think the Black Gentiles got? Now, there are two methodologies used in religion that explains why people can formulate varying beliefs from the same biblical source. Eisegesis and exegesis, which is intentionally done to obscure perceptions over different markets. Simply put, it's sorcery. The Bible contains coded texts that without the blueprint, the Christian really does not know what is being translated. Christianity, which is Gentile Christianity, focus on the teachings in the New Testament as the new covenant for Gentiles, which is a setup by the colonizers to keep our people under their control through brainwashing, worshiping demons who we are taught to believe is the Most High God. And this is spiritual warfare. This has lower consciousness and our spiritual protection, as well as fragmented connection to the true Most High God. And I am speaking to those who possess a soul. And the biggest deception is that a man is coming from the clouds to save us. No one is coming. And this has been done to keep people waiting instead of preparing what they, the Satanists, have planned for us in this battle of Armageddon. Most Black Christians today who consider themselves a Gentile descend from those who were colonized by satanic Babylonians through the conversion into Abrahamic religion. I'll read this article from medium.com. It explains subconscious programming so well. Here it states, quote, "From birth until about age 7, our brains are in a highly absorbent state. That's because their brain waves are in a state known as theta, a dreamlike hypnotic state where the subconscious mind is wide open to suggestion. In this period, Children aren't just learning consciously, they're soaking up everything around them at a subconscious level. During these years, the brain is laying down its neural pathways, the networks that will guide thoughts, behaviors, and reactions throughout life. Think of this pathway like roads being built in a new city. The more a road is traveled, the more developed and solid it becomes. Similarly, the more often we experience something or repeat a behavior in those early years, the stronger that neural pathway becomes, turning it into a habit or a belief. Because we're in this highly receptive state, everything we see, hear, and feel in our early environment gets programmed into our minds. If your parents were constantly stressed about money, chances are you've picked up some of those money-related anxieties without even realizing it. If you witnessed frequent arguments or felt a lack of emotional support, these early experiences can shape your beliefs about relationships, trust, or even your self-worth. It's like we've inherited a mental blueprint from our caregivers, shaping how we see the world. This isn't about blaming our parents, they were most likely programmed in the same way, but rather understanding how deeply these early experiences imprint on our subconscious minds. It's fascinating how much of what we do as adults is influenced by the subtle programs we pick up from our parents. Without even realizing it, we absorb their behaviors, beliefs, and coping mechanisms, which can then shape how we navigate the world in adulthood. These patterns often run deep and affect everything from our relationships to how we view success, love, and self-worth. End quote. Children are so full of imagination, wonder, and creativity. So we must protect this at all costs before the poison of our society seeps in. When you were a child, did you have an adult shut down your dreams or imagination? How did that make you feel? The Christian Bible is a book to spellbound its followers into believing untruths. There are common scriptures in Christianity that can be identified as spells from a spiritual perspective. Christian teachings and how they are taught manipulates the thought and mind of how the person perceives themselves, the world, and God. Mental magic or spells are implanted within the subconscious mind of its victim to program the person to think or feel a particular way without their awareness, and the result is brainwashing. It's one of the strongest spells because it's passed on to offspring throughout generations. In my opinion, the strongest spells in the Bible placed in the minds of Black people is the superiority of Jews, a subconscious belief that certain people are superior, or that we, Black people, are inferior or evil through the curse of Ham. As well as that, the veneration of our ancestors is an evil practice, yet the Catholic Church venerates dead people they call saints all the time. Also, that spirituality is evil when the church is set up like that of spiritual practices. The altar at the front of the church, people kneel to pray to God, or the fact that offerings are given, or immersing someone in water used to spiritually cleanse the person. All practices that came from spirituality. Most followers are unaware about the truth of religion, and in their ignorance, they have been taught to fear or hate what's beneficial and love or admire what's to their detriment. In my opinion, the most dangerous Bible spell to the psyche is the spell of love your enemy or turn the other cheek. This has led people to try to fix broken people or stay in unhealthy relationships and just bear the toxic load. It is my true belief this is why many Southern Black people will befriend a racist or Trump supporter, people who clearly hate them. It's also my theory why Black people are so quick to march, protest, rally, and boycott, time after time, knowing it never makes significant difference of change. But never collectively do we band together and say we are done and walk away from this abusive and violent system. With false beliefs, many are unknowingly contributing to their own downfall. Mind control is the result of spells casted onto people, altering their perception in reality through their subconscious thoughts. Mind control is only possible through negative subconscious programming onto those in lower consciousness. Everyone becomes a target as soon as they're born, whether through toxic home environments, exposure to Abrahamic religions, exposure to superficial American value system, public schools, or just by living in United States of Babylon, narcissistic society, ran by narcissists and psychopaths where anything goes. As mentioned in the previous slide, from birth to age 7, we were in a highly absorbent mental state where our subconscious mind was programmed, suggesting that everything we saw, heard, and felt in our environment became programmed into our minds. The elites and government must create perfect conditions for effective mind control, which is achieved by inducing fear onto populations through trauma and religion. Continued states of abuse, neglect, and fear programs the subconscious with negativity, in turn pitting people in survival mode who are more easily controlled and manipulated. Many people in society have experienced varying levels of trauma since childhood, and many now are living in survival mode, feeding the cycles of negativity within society. All forms of witchcraft which are done on mass populations, however, the powers are very persistent on spiritual attacks to Black communities, especially poor Black communities. The most utilized form of witchcraft is done with words, which when used deceptively, it alters a person's thoughts and behaviors. This slide shows a few ways they have used mind control on the U.S. population. Now, everything is pretty much an illusion. Propaganda is a fancy word for lying. Operation Mockingbird is a CIA operation and is an alleged large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency that began in the early years of the Cold War and attempted to manipulate domestic American news media organizations for propaganda purposes. MK Ultra was an illegal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the US CIA to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. It's documented that experiments were done on Americans without their awareness and consent. And per Wikipedia, it states that during a hearing by the Senate Health Subcommittee, the testimony of a deputy director of the CIA stated that over 30 institutions and universities were involved in the experimentation program of testing drugs on unknowing citizens at all social levels, high and low, Americans and foreign. Several of these tests involved the issuing of LSD to unaware subjects in social situations. Psychological manipulation has been a weapon used against the American people for a very long time, and people are unaware they are under mind control from these programs that started in the 1950s. Propaganda are lies spread in our society through U.S. media outlets for the purpose of influencing public perception. Therefore, propaganda is a form of mental magic, and the unsuspecting person tend to believe the lies. Their over-reporting of violence in Black communities, whether the violence is real or not, because yes, some things are being staged. What it does is intentionally shift perceptions about Black people as violent and unstable. Propaganda has negatively affected our communities, so much so that the very belief of this propaganda into the minds of melanated people have developed into this self-fulfilling prophecy in many cases. Also, it has placed a negative worldview of our people and communities onto non-Black or non-American people to carry contempt towards us, treating us less than or much worse. Propaganda is the virus that spreads, infecting entire populations worldwide. All public news are propaganda outlets trying to elicit a certain outcome. The continuous repetition of propaganda is how the government casts spells on people's mind, and it works extremely well. One of the reasons why black people are over policed or get pulled over by the cops so much is because of this propaganda. If you haven't caught on yet, many Americans who are avid TV watchers or watch other forms of media are under spells. And this ties back to spiritual warfare. Many are unaware that the hate they have for themselves or others is a sign of a spiritual attack, where a negative entity or demonic force has attached to this energy of the person. That emotion is the sign that a person should heal. No demonic force or negative entity has jurisdiction over us unless we allow it. We also possess the power to use our energy to work for us, not against us. Hate literally brings sickness to the body. And this is why United States of Babylon never encourages real healing. Rap music is the only genre of music that contains hateful lyrics. It's highly sexualized and promotes violence and drugs, all to encourage dissension and negativity amongst black people. A community can't produce future leaders if their youth are destructive towards one another. Music can be therapeutic, or it can be harmful. As mentioned previously, subconscious programming occurs that everything we see, we hear, and we feel in our environment gets programmed into our minds. Negative subconscious programming on the minds of the youth has very damaging effects, where they will act out what they believe to be true about themselves and their environment and imitate those that they are influenced by. Many musicians are acting a role given to them by their record labels, but the youth is unaware, and because of their impressionable nature and their love for the artist, they will model the behavior of this artist and or messages that they convey in their lyrics. This is called suggestive programming, a tactic used by marketers to hypnotize their target audience. Per Google, it states that the core idea of suggestive programming is that by repeatedly exposing people to certain scenarios or ideas in media, creators can subtly influence their subconscious minds, making them more accepting of those ideas when they eventually manifest in real life. The negativity pushed in the rap music onto the ears and eyes of our youth is a form of suggestive programming. This is most definitely a form of spell work or sorcery that is being done to the minds of our people. They want us to manifest a negative reality for ourselves, one of violence and disharmony. The youth are still in the early stages of psychological and social development and are easily impressed upon when their identity into adulthood is taking shape. Unfortunately, because of their lack of awareness, the youth becomes easy prey to this manipulative and evil system that intentionally targets to harm them. Most major advertising focuses on marketing to the youth for this reason. Toxic music is targeted to no other racial group like black people. I never heard country or pop music talking about killing each other or selling drugs, both genres which have a larger white audience. The government owns the airwaves, and I saw a social media post where a Jewish music executive admitted they are forced to only push negativity in rap music. Negative visuals or lyrics can lead to mood changes like anxiety, depression, aggressive behaviors, negative thought patterns, as well as an increased desire to perform destructive acts towards self and others. This is a government agenda meant for us to destroy ourselves and our own communities. For individuals and communities living in survival mode, people with PTSD, today's rap music is a true detriment to their mental, emotional, and physical health. This information from Google AI, the effects of negative music on the brain. And in summary, it states that negative music exacerbates negative emotions. It increases rumination on sadness or anger, a potential for the person to adopt the negative emotions expressed in the music, negatively impacts cognitive performances, and has an influence of violence to the impressionable adolescent. So here's my suggestion. Parents and caregivers take the action to speak to your youth about the dangers of listening to negative music, as well as set an expectation to that child that negative music isn't tolerated while also leading by example. Awareness is the first step to change, and we adults set the bar as the change makers of our communities. Negative music, be it rap or any other type, is really affecting the health of our children, and why we see a lot of aggression, violence, increased sexual behaviors, and changes in sexuality in Black youth today. Violence and other suggestive programming is on all media platforms and is at an all-time high, a lot more prevalent and persistent than it was a few years ago. Now I'll shift to a topic that's spoken about, however, true intentions not outwardly discussed, and that is voodoo, voodoo, and hoodoo. Spiritual practices based on the idea of orishas, grounded in Yoruba mythology, where it is thought that nature energies influence or control different aspects of our physical world. The orishas are found in different spiritual systems, go by different names, whose origins start with the Yoruba religion Ifa of the Yoruba Jews of Nigeria, who also reside in Benin and Togo. Now, in my thorough investigation, I discovered that the true identities of the multiple orishas of the Yoruba religion Ifa, as well as voodoo, voodoo, and hoodoo, it's the veneration of the demonic Anunnaki serpent gods, the gods of the Israelites, who are the Elohim of the Christian Bible. Orisha veneration is also found in Santeria practices. White people have been condemned from spreading religions as the evil white Ashkenazi Jews. And this entire time, they were taught by the true evildoers, the Israelites, the Black Israelites who are the Babylonians doing satanic rituals. Now listen closely to what I am saying. All of the ancient Black Hebrews of the ancient past were sorcerers practicing wickedness through their spells and demon conjuring, doing human sacrifices and killing the indigenous for their land and resources. Again, all practices that are still occurring today in secrecy. There has been a major global cover-up of who they truly are, all done by the shadow government, the Black nobility. To perceive that all Black people are victims of a system by which was developed by the Moors is a major lie, as well as the spread of Christianity's false chosen one narrative and the story of God's redemption of the Israelites. Their God is Satan, found all throughout the ancient religions, starting with Hindu, the mother to all of today's religions. Another major cover-up is that the ancient Hindus are the Black Moors. A cultural cover-up because if all people actually knew the demonic practices of the Hindus, their cover would be blown. There is no good versus bad Moor. All Moors belong to these religious practices. All of today's religions have been passed on through the ages under different names, however, true to the same source of people and their god Satan. So in summary, because I know I just revealed a lot, the polytheistic practices of the ancient Jews before allegedly transitioning to monotheism would be similar, if not the same, as today's Ifa, voodoo, voodoo, and hoodoo, Chaldean dark magic. In today's age of information, please research before practicing ancient spiritual systems. There are a lot of dark high priestesses and priests providing false narratives of what they are practicing within these systems. Many people are seeking a more healthy, holistic, or spiritual way of living and choosing to leave Abrahamic religions, but unfortunately, getting into older spiritual systems belonging to the same wicked people. This also includes the ancient Cometians, as well, who were worshiping Anunnaki serpent gods, coined the Neteru. The Obeah Bible was written by a Hindu occultist and was a demonic Bible popular amongst African Americans and Jamaicans, and used in many black religions. So, my melanated people, my soul beings, we are not all alike. There are black people who were born soulless, who are demonic. Also, we are not all from Africa. And for many of us, these were not the spiritual practices of our ancestors. So here's my spiritual perspective. The intentions of these religions, whether poly or monotheistic, was to lead people astray from knowing the one Most High God, as well to recruit soul beings or people to worship their god Satan. Satan's entire objective is to get the ones with souls to turn away from the Most High God and worship him. And it worked by tricking us into teachings of the Abrahamic religions, voodoo, and so on. It's coined tricknology spoken by the Nation of Islam. Now, I was raised in a Christian household and considered myself a Christian and became baptized later in adulthood. And then I found out the truth and renounced this covenant I made in ignorance through a spiritual means. Our ancestors, colonizers, and killers were black people, not white. Lastly, here's a serious topic that needs discussion. There are many melanated people who are magic gangsters behind a veil of secrecy, doing spell work on other melanated people and then turn around and lament about the suffering in the community. There hasn't been enough talk about the warlocks and witches within our families and communities who are a part of the destruction of the black community that hinders our collective progression. Many black Christians are conditioned to believe that witchcraft is fake and superstitious. Well, I'm here to say it's very real. So real that conjuring demons to kill a person in their sleep is a reality that happens. It's time to wake up to reality, to take accountability that collectively, black people, we are not victims of a system if we are contributing to its chaos in some way. We are just as responsible for our own destruction if we choose not to operate from a space of love and harmony. Here's another episode on what is the U.S. government up to? The cult of the dragon is a very real cult that existed according to internet sources in the 14th century. But to give you the truth, the Abrahamic religion is a cult that worship dragons or serpents, the Anunnaki Elohim. Therefore, this cult has been in existence since the ancient Near East, of Mesopotamia, worshipped by the Hebrews, Moors, Jews, Muslims, and Israelites, Bibles, Afro-Asiatics. The cult of the dragon is a very ancient cult that has been practiced in various time periods, under the disguise of many names, such as Abrahamic religions. This picture on this page is an alleged picture of Tiamat, who is a demonic five-headed dragon who is Leviathan, the sea monster mentioned in the Bible. Here's a description I found on the internet. Quote, the cult of the dragon, also known as Keepers of the Secret Hoard, or more recently, Wearers of Purple, was a semi-religious evil organization, a cult venerating undead dragons or Draco-liches. The prophecy of the cult is the dead dragon shall rule the world entire, and the dominion of the dead dragon shall endure until the end of all things, so we swear. A cult ritual, end quote. To throw people off on what they really do behind the public's back, the powers will conceal the identity of their cults by entitling it fantasy or sci-fi. But in real life, in real time, they are venerating demonic dragons. Here is something I wanted to share. Quote, in Yoruba religion, serpents are deeply symbolic and hold significant spiritual meaning, often representing renewal, transformation, and rebirth. The serpent or snake is associated with several deities, most notably Oshumare, the rainbow serpent, end quote. The Yoruba Jews, with Orisha veneration in Yoruba religion tradition, is the veneration of these dragons, the demon dragons, Tiamat. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, this is from Revelation 12, verse 9. Describes the casting down of a great dragon, identified as the ancient serpent Satan. Origins of serpent worship started in India with Hindu and also ancient Mesopotamia. Recall Abraham and his family is from ancient Mesopotamia. Abrahamic religion follows the cult practices of the ancient Babylonians in ancient Mesopotamia. And these were the practices of black people, black Hebrews of the Bible. This came from a website called Covenant of Babylon. It says, Tiamat, the primordial goddess of the sea, was depicted as a monster with a bestial and was imagined as a water snake or dragon. It is identified with the sea monsters from other mythologies like Leviathan or Yam, Lotan of Hebrew myths or Tannin, the sea monster of Hebrew legends. And now, do you see the word Semitic and Akkadian in this text? Now, further down it says, the creation of the gods and monsters are thought to refer to the elevation of volcanoes and tectonic movements, and the battle between Tiamat and Marduk is considered a cosmic catastrophe, existing planets which were created. Hebrew concept also says, Tiamat and Apsu embody the cosmic abyss filled with primordial energies that are the source of creation. Now, I know what I just said probably went over your head, but this is just bringing the truth to light. Now, according to legend, Tiamat gave birth to other dragon, serpent, or reptilian deities or gods who were worshipped in ancient Mesopotamia as well as Egypt. These would include the Anunnaki gods, mentioned in ancient editions of the Bible, such as the Ethiopian Bible. But it has now been omitted from King James Version to conceal the identity of God from religious followers who are worshiping, unbeknownst to them, evil serpent dragons, deities from Babylon. The name of these hidden serpent dragon gods are Enki, Marduk, and Lil, all which are located in the ancient mythologies of the ancient Near East in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan. Here is a family tree I made to show the relationship between the evil dragons Tiamat, who is Leviathan in the Bible, to the gods of the Anunnaki pantheon, the Elohim, the gods of the ancient Near East. Here on the left of this slide is another description about Tiamat, based on Akkadian and Babylonian mythology, coining her an evil dragon goddess of the Draconian pantheon and a brother named Baphomet, whose names look very similar to the god of the Illuminati, Baphomet. The Akkadians in the Bible are the Akan tribe of Ghana, West Africa, who are also the French Acadians or French Creoles of New Orleans. These are the Jews and Israelites who are Moors, who colonized the world and spread their worship of evil serpent or dragon gods, their goddess mother being the evil dragon sea monster, Tiamat. Quote, Tiamat isn't just the mother of the Mesopotamian gods. She's the mother of monsters. Well, at least the monsters in the Mesopotamian line, end quote. And this comes from demonicparadisefandom.com. There is an alternate reality on Earth that many of us have not been privy to. We've been taught things like monsters and dragons are fictional in the realm of sci-fi and fantasy. Now, whether people believe in this or not is not what's important. What's most important is this worshiping of Tiamat, known as Leviathan in the Bible, has occurred since Babylon and is the satanic practices of the ancient Babylonians. These Babylonians who have converted billions of people into their Abrahamic religions, more notably Christianity, through worldwide colonization and missionary work. The real identity of Jesus is a serpent deity portrayed as a man. Now, this passage in front of you comes from a blog that talks about why would anyone join the cult of the dragon. Here's a person who responded to the question, and I'll just read the underlined sentences. The purple wearers do know the cult's real goal and now about Tiamat. But the further down you go, the less followers know about Tiamat and the cult's true intentions. It is brainwashing. Even if followers do know the intention of destroying the world, the wearers of the purple convince them it's the right thing to do. They are looking for a purpose in life, a social group to belong to. They are looking for like-minded people, sometimes just wealth and power, as the cult very well is connected. At first, they often don't know they are joining a cult, and by the time they realize it, it is often too late. Last sentence states, they offer you the worthy and power under the rules of Tiamat due to prophecy. Now, there is a prophecy, or better yet, plan by the world powers of this cult to conjure up the dragon demon Tiamat, what is coined the return of Tiamat, which I'll explain next. Here I'll read the underlined sentences. Hereafter, Tiamat's essence was left waiting, lingering between the confines of the chaos realm and Earth until she finally has the chance to return during their respective apocalyptic events. Tiamat will devour the gods in the dreamlands as a means to increase her power, granting her enough strength to materialize in the mortal plane and break free of her bonds to return to Earth back into the primordial waters. According to an ancient mystic in Iraq, the longer the veil is thin before mortal eyes, allowing Tiamat's monsters to be further exposed, the more chance it heralds the return of Tiamat. Now, I'm not attempting to convince anyone or anybody of anything to believe in, nor will I give my opinion. However, I'm here to reveal what is being done under the veil of secrecy by world governments and the Vatican, and what religious followers unknowingly have been given their time and dedication to their entire lives. Believing Christianity contains the true story of the Most High God. But instead, it's Satan, also known as Lucifer, and a host of demons, the evil serpent dragon, just as it states in the Bible, who is the real God of the Bible. The prophecy of Tiamat is in the book of Revelation. The prophecy are plans to perform satanic rituals to bring back Tiamat, the evil dragon goddess from the abyss. And this is what your world powers do not want you to know. When a person goes to church or worship any Abrahamic religion, they are adding to the energy these Satanists are using to conjure up these demons in the underworld. Demons do manifest in the physical 3D reality, just like angels, and this is spiritual warfare. Gentile Christian followers are unaware that they are worshiping a demonic god that is being conjured to destroy them. The end of Satan's empire on earth is here, and these are their plans to fight. Christian followers are mostly converts, and majority have a soul, which means a divine connection to the Most High God, who are their target and have always been. Portals are being opened now to bring the demon sea monster Leviathan, aka Tiamat, back into the physical reality, who is the Antichrist, with plans to sacrifice many people to feed the beast of the sea monster. Now, this isn't a time to fear, but a time to learn, heal, and raise your vibration so you can take back your power from Satan's mind control. Global and individual spiritual warfare on people, communities, and mass populations are being led by the Moors and the Anunnaki, the Mesopotamian serpent gods. These soulless people formed all the satanic secret societies we know in the world today. They do rituals using our collective energy at big events like concerts and football games, and of course, church, to literally feed the demons of Babylon's power, attacking our food, air, and land. The political structure we live in is the design of the Moorish feudal system. They set it up to make the white people look like the bad guy, while no one suspects is the black Moors the entire time. Revealed by a social media teacher, Rod Hayes. Now, he reveals a lot of never heard of secret information about the U.S. government, and that's because he is a part of the secret black government who spies on the black conscious community. He is a chief of the Hebrews, the Moorish Washita tribes. These tribes claim to be the indigenous natives of America, but are in fact the invaders and colonizers. Washita Indians make up the tribes of Israel. Black Muslims call the Anunnaki their black gods. Now, I want to be clear and say this. Many white people are in on the scheme, but definitely not all. History repeats itself if cycles are not broken. This feudal system is happening in real time where the church and monarchy are at the top, all which occurs without the public's awareness. Feudalism depended on a rigid class structure in which a king gave land to nobles, who gave land to knights, who protected the king and nobles. The U.S. is being ran by a royal class called the black nobility, who are the 13 families known as the Cabal. The white royals in England are distant relatives of the Moors, which I revealed in a previous video. Currently, there is a Moorish monarchy that's still in existence with a hidden black pope behind the scenes running the United States. The Moors have restructured U.S. society for white people to be their front man in government and politics, as well as the face of the 1% in wealth in this country. And the white people in power are very aware the Moors run them. These are warlocks who have casted spells onto the entire U.S. population, especially the foundational black person, that they lost their power, all which is propaganda, because they intentionally did a switcheroo and moved things around so people won't ever peep the truth. West Africans run U.S. politics. The Burkina Faso leader, Ibrahim Traoré, is the psyops being used for black empowerment. He's also the wicked government. So don't be fooled by the propaganda. That's why I'm here to spill their well-hidden secrets. Now that all has been revealed, where do you believe the average American, black or white, exists in this paradigm? If you look at the pyramid to the left, the area of the peasants or serf class is the largest group, represented by its big size, larger than the upper three classes. From top to bottom, as population increases, money and power decreases. From bottom to top, as money and power increases, population decreases. In feudalism, a small population has more money and power than the majority of those they seek to control. This is where the top 1% of the population is ran by elitist corporations. People we have never met and will never meet. Yet they make decisions on our behalf and control our choices. We make them wealthy, for which we get no benefit from. The American public is the peasant class. To the right is the mirroring of the European medieval feudalism with the current corporate feudalism today. So you can see the Moorish European monarchy redesign their feudal system into corporate feudalism with the similar hierarchies and roles. We are in the age of mass awakenings, and when Satan can no longer control you, it seeks to destroy you. This is the agenda for soul beings being set up now, Agenda 2030, the one world religion and all other things on this list. It's to bind us melanated soul beings into a deeper spiritual bondage, as well as our extermination. This is the new world the satanic forces want to create. No physical control over anything, not even our own thoughts. To those who are still asleep and haven't awakened to what has been happening behind our backs, this is the future they are planning for us, but only if we choose to participate. Healing will break the mind control spells placed over our consciousness so we can regain our sovereignty to self govern. We are evolving. There is no more fighting fire with fire or begging for change. It's time to disengage from an abusive system, heal ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. People have more say in their lives than they may believe. Through their mind control techniques, people feel as though they don't have a way out, which is further from the truth. For this system to create this chaotic world, they need our participation. Without it, their system fails. So here are ways to resist the warfare being waged against us. Be cautious because misinformation is at an all-time high in the media. A lot of the calamities that are taking place right now are created by those in power and not by nature. All to create conditions of famine, disease, and a planned civil war to come. Lucifer and his demons are losing their power and are planning war against those they see as a threat to maintain that power. The war that is being waged is against us. Poisoning our water, our food being GMO, tainted meat and vegetables, to 5G towers with high radio frequency to cause disease, as well as other nefarious things. What we see is the manipulation of systems, utilizing witchcraft, and the destruction and extermination of the Most High God's people, so that Satan can continue his reign on earth. Satanic organizations rule the world by way of violence, oppression, and witchcraft, the spiritual warfare discussed throughout this entire presentation. We are deprogramming our subconscious mind and reprogramming it with truth and vitality. And it's not easy, so extend yourself grace, love, and kindness in this new way of existing. It's not about being perfect, but showing up the best way you need to honor you and be at peace with self. All the things many of us weren't given in childhood. The good changes we make today impacts our families and future generations to come. Living amazing is a legacy we should pass down the family line instead of dysfunction. The Babylon system will never change, so it's now the opportunity to walk away in peace, deprogram from their brainwashing and mind controlling techniques, and refill our vessels with information to help us thrive without their assistance. Liberation begins in the mindset, and once we change that, we are free from their tyranny. Here are the sources that I used, and as always, I encourage you to do your own research. Learning for yourself breaks the cycle of indoctrination that we should look to others for information rather than research it for ourselves. If we have been taught to hate, then we surely can also be taught to love. The fall of Babylon is more than just the fall of America or this worldwide corrupt system. It's more about destroying the spirit of Babylon that lives within the souls of so many people. To my soul beings, to transition into the new earth of peace and oneness, you must heal your heart. Our self-governance relies on the energy of love, which resides within the higher self seeking to be released. The spirit of Babylon lives within the minds and heart of so many due to persistent social conditioning since childhood. So one can leave America or even live off grid. But if a person has yet to heal, then they take these toxic mindsets with them wherever they go. For example, this is the energy of greed or jealousy, judgment, entitlement, apathy, hate, anger, self-absorbed, and egoism. The journey of healing, which is the journey of self, is not about seeking perfection, but seeking peace and no longer allowing negative emotions to have control over your life, acting in ways that brings harm to yourself and or others. Viewing our shadows, or what many call our demons, from a higher perspective of love and understanding about the human experience that we all came here to learn, share, and experience on earth. Our emotions are an invitation to love ourselves more wholly and deeply and understand that we are not alone in our circumstances. We all share similar stories that connects us to this human experience. We came here as souls looking to ascend to higher levels. Once healing and the acceptance of self occurs, through this love we shall experience peace and oneness on earth. So let my words be a reassurance that we are all in this together. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Voice of Sankofa, and I wish you all the best on your journey to self-discovery, and know that you are not alone. Peace, oneness, and sending so much love.